Ben 10 might just be one of the most powerful cartoon characters of all time. For example, with nearly omnipotent forms like Alien X at his disposal, this dude easily reset the entire universe, and he only got stronger with each alien added to the Omnitrix. However, he wasn't always this powerful, and today we're going to be going back to the very beginning, taking a look at every alien from the original Ben 10 series, from the OG lineup all the way to the additions that he picked up along the way. But for now, before we can get into all of the aliens, we gotta talk about the Omnitrix. This was a tool which could rewrite a person's DNA and temporarily transform them into a variety of aliens, granting the user access to their forms and abilities. The Omnitrix was created by a Galvan scientist named Azimuth long before it ever came into contact with Ben. It was intended as a means of understanding between species across the galaxy. By allowing the user to transform into different alien life forms, Azimuth hoped that the Omnitrix would promote empathy, enabling people to see life from each other's perspectives and reduce conflict through shared experience. However, the potential for this device to be used as a weapon quickly drew in many dangerous aliens to try and take it. One of them was Vilgax, a warlord who wanted to use the Omnitrix to take over the universe. To stop it from falling into the wrong hands, Azimuth locked the device into a containment pod and then sent it into space, hoping to keep it safe until he could retrieve it later. But that didn't go as planned, and the pod crash-landed on Earth. It wouldn't be long from there until a young Ben Tennyson stumbled across it and took a closer look. But when he did, the device activated, attached itself to his wrist, and suddenly the galaxy's most advanced piece of technology was bonded to a 10-year-old boy. Although the Omnitrix originally started with the DNA of only 10 aliens, through the first series, Ben gradually unlocked more aliens that he could bond with, until that series ended with a total of 22 aliens that he could transform into. With that all said, it's about time that we get into them, so let's see what's up first. Oh, weird. This was supposed to be an alien, but it looks like a like and subscribe button? Interesting. You should, maybe try pressing them to see what happens, and while you do, I guess I'll load up the first actual alien, Heatblast. The first time Ben activates the Omnitrix, he transforms into Heatblast, a Pyronite from the star Pyros. His entire body is composed of plasma contained in a crust of cooled volcanic rock, making him essentially a living mass of fire. This moment was anything but graceful as Ben panics, loses control, and accidentally sets off a forest fire. It's completely unstable, but it goes to show just how powerful and dangerous this form could be, as it can cause disasters even by accident. Heatblast has full control over thermal energy, can generate fire from his body, manipulate existing flames, and project them as concentrated blasts or wide-range explosions. His heat output is enough to melt through solid materials, and with precision, he's capable of using that same energy to weld, burn, or reshape objects, like when he melts through metal to clear a path or cuts clean holes through walls. Because of his elemental nature, Heatblast can absorb fire and redirect it, allowing him to grow stronger when surrounded by heat rather than being harmed by it. However, this same physiology makes him vulnerable to water and cold environments, which can suppress his flames and limit his strength. Like all of Ben's transformations, Heatblast enhances his physical abilities well beyond human limits, granting increased strength, endurance, and speed. But more than that, he represents Ben's first real taste of power and the danger that comes with it. Heatblast is the moment that Ben starts to realize that the Omnitrix isn't just a toy, it's a responsibility. The second alien that Ben transforms into is Wildmutt, a Vulpimancer from the planet Vulpin. Vulpimancers are quadrupedal predators that rely on raw physical instinct rather than advanced intellect. Their front limbs are heavily muscled, built for pouncing and grappling, while their back legs are smaller and designed for quick bursts of speed. The most interesting feature about them, though, is their head, which looks like a jaw lined with massive fangs that jut out past the upper lip, giving Wildmutt a distinctly feral appearance. Without visible eyes or ears, it's a design that perfectly captures a creature that operates on instinct alone. Despite their animalistic nature, though, Vulpimancers aren't completely mindless. They possess a rudimentary social structure and a form of vocal communication, but compared to most sentient alien species, their behavior is pretty primitive. And this all makes sense when you consider what the planet Vulpin is like. It is a place cloaked in near total darkness due to heavy pollution and the toxic atmosphere. Most Vulpamancers live underground where light is virtually non-existent. Evolving in that environment, sight became unnecessary. But rather than leaving them helpless, nature gave them something far more powerful. Vulpamancers can navigate their surroundings through a highly advanced sense of smell and vibration detection, which allows them to build a mental map of their environment in 3 dimensions. Instead of eyes or a traditional nose, Wildmutt breathes and sees through a series of gill-like slits that run along its neck and back. These specialized organs pick up even the smallest changes in air pressure, smell, or movement. But they also come with a pretty significant drawback. Because his senses are so sensitive, loud noises or overwhelming smells can completely disorient and even incapacitate him. Overstimulation is his greatest weakness, forcing Ben to rely on awareness rather than brute force when fighting in this form. Even so, Wildmutt is the perfect beast mode alien and is surprisingly useful despite lacking eyes and ears. The third of Ben's transformations, and arguably one of the most significant, is Diamondhead. Diamondhead is a Petrosapien, a crystalline species native to the planet Petropia, a world formed from solid crystal structures with a surface that reflects and refracts light across towering spires that stretch into space. Petropia itself is uniquely shaped. It's not spherical like most worlds, but it's instead jagged and faceted, resembling a massive crystal shard. Petrosapiens are silicone-based life forms, meaning that their entire physiology is composed of crystals rather than organic tissue. Their bodies are incredibly dense and durable, and are capable of withstanding immense force and channeling energy through their crystal structures. Diamondhead's color is a deep aquamarine, and it's distinct among Petrosapiens, giving him a reflective appearance. As expected from a species entirely composed of living crystals, Diamondhead's abilities all revolve around crystal generation and manipulation. He can form crystal structures from his body or from the environment, shape them into weapons, create barriers or projectiles at will, and the crystals that he creates are incredibly durable, comparable in strength to Diamond as his own name suggests. This allows him to block heavy attacks or pierce through solid materials without sustaining much damage. He can also reshape his own body, turning his arms into blades or spikes to enhance his attacks. This ability makes him adaptable in combat, as he's able to shift between offense and defense just about instantly. He can even launch crystal shards as ranged attacks, or create pillars or walls to immobilize and trap his enemies. Diamondhead quickly became one of Ben's most reliable forms, appearing throughout the series as both a defensive and offensive powerhouse. But despite his incredible durability, he does have a notable limitation. While nearly indestructible, he isn't exactly flexible, and his body can't really twist, compress, or squeeze into small spaces. And in battle, his crystals can sometimes become lodged in walls or debris, leaving him unable to move. On top of that, high-frequency sonic waves can fracture his crystals, and while minor cracks can be healed pretty quickly, if they actually shatter, it will prevent him from regenerating entirely. Basically, once a Petrosapien's body is destroyed, it just can't recover naturally. Even so, this is easily one of Ben's most useful and consistent forms, which is why we see it so often through the series. And the final alien introduced in the first episode is Accelerate, a Kinoceleran from the planet Kinet. At first glance, Accelerate resembles a sleek kind of reptilian creature, almost like a fusion between a chameleon and a velociraptor. However, rather than traditional feet, each of Accelerate's legs ends in a pair of curved claws that meet at the heel, forming a kind of wheel-like joint. These allow Accelerate to reach incredible speeds across just about any surface. He can even outspeed cars, energy blasts, and lightning. The Kinoceleran homeworld rotates at an extraordinary rate around its sun, causing time to pass differently there. Days pass in seconds, and a lifetime on Kinet might last only a few weeks to an outsider. On top of that, its surface is racked by electromagnetic storms so violent that standing still for even a moment could be fatal. This environment forced the Kinocelerans to evolve for speed, because the moment they stopped moving, the planet would turn against them. But on Earth, Ben doesn't have to deal with that danger. Here, Accelerate Speed isn't about survival, it's about creating opportunities and making every second count with that speed. But like all the other forms, we have some clear weaknesses. Accelerate relies on traction to maintain control at high speeds, so if there are slippery or slick surfaces like ice, that lack of friction can cause an immediate loss of balance, and that could be pretty dangerous when you're going a couple 100 miles per hour. Similarly, electromagnetic pulses or disruptions can interfere with the delicate biomechanical systems that allow him to move so fast. Opponents with heightened reflexes like Wildmutt, whose senses allow them to track movements instinctively, can also counter his speed through timing rather than force. Even so, these drawbacks are pretty minor compared to some which other forms have, and because of that, Accelerate's sheer velocity, agility, and reaction time outweighs just about all of his limitations, and it's why Ben relies on it so heavily so often. The next of Ben's transformations is Grey Matter, a Galvan from the planet Galvan Prime. Unlike most of Ben's other forms, Grey Matter drastically reduces his size, turning him into a small, frog-like alien that's barely 10 centimeters tall. As the name suggests, Grey Matter's defining feature is his intelligence. The Galvans are a race that is defined by their knowledge and reason. Their civilization is founded on the pursuit of technological, historical, and philosophical understanding. Conflict is rare, as logic and diplomacy take precedence over violence, and Galvan Prime was among the first planets to sign the Galactic Code of Conduct, formalizing its commitment to peace and interstellar cooperation. Galvans have an innate fascination with technology. They collect and study machines from across the galaxy, raise their children to understand the inner workings of devices on both a mechanical and theoretical level. And when Ben takes on this form, his cognitive abilities increase exponentially, granting him access to advanced scientific reasoning, technological understanding, and deductive insight way beyond human limits. In this state, Ben can comprehend and solve problems that would otherwise be impossible for him. He can design complex machinery and even repair alien devices with ease. That said, Grey Matter's intelligence is not limited to stored information. It extends to instinctive understanding. His brain allows him to process and analyze information in real time, identifying the structure and function of unfamiliar technology just by watching it. Unsurprisingly, Grey Matter is not built for combat. He is small, fragile, and lacks the strength to take on even weak opponents like a cat or a dog. While he is capable of clever maneuvers or quick escapes, direct fights are rarely an option for him. But battle isn't always best, and Grey Matter is the perfect example of finding new solutions to any problems that might arise. And then we have something on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Our next alien, 4Arms, who has 4 arms. They didn't really try super hard with that name, did they? 4Arms is a Tetraman from the planet Koros, and he's essentially the opposite of Grey Matter in every way. He stands several meters tall, he is built entirely from muscle, and embodies raw power. Explaining 4Arms' abilities is pretty straightforward. He is strong, like super strong. When Ben needs to overpower an enemy or stop a large-scale threat, this is the form that he turns to. 4Arms has been shown lifting and throwing massive objects and taking down creatures several times his own size. Among Tetramans, males are generally weaker than females, who both dominate them in society and as warriors. However, Ben's 4Arms surpasses this tradition. He was even able to defeat Luma Redwind, the princess of Koros and the heir to the throne, whose strength exceeded that of most Tetramans. However, victory on Koros comes with its own customs. In Tetraman culture, a female warrior who is defeated in combat is honor-bound to pursue her conqueror as a mate. As a result, Luma declares that Ben, or at least 4Arms, will be her future husband, much to his horror. This alien form can withstand falls from crazy heights and absorb impact that would level buildings. With his powerful leg muscles, he can leap several stories in a single bound, and often uses this ability to travel through terrain or close distances in combat. Beyond just his raw muscle, 4Arms can also generate massive shockwaves by clapping his hands together, creating concussive blasts strong enough to knock back enemies and destroy nearby structures. And when all 4Arms clap together at once, the resulting wave, known as the Big Smack, becomes one of his most powerful attacks. These shockwaves, combined with his physical resilience and agility, make Forearms an extremely balanced powerhouse in Ben's arsenal. However, his large size does come with practical drawbacks. Because Forearms is so massive, it makes it difficult for him to maneuver through small spaces, and it makes him a pretty big target in combat. Even so, give him some space and a one-on-one fight and there isn't much that he can't deal with. The next alien in Ben's original lineup is Stinkfly, a human-sized insect-like creature that moves on 4 crab-like legs and has 2 arms tipped with pronged claws. Stinkfly's head is also extremely useful, having 4 eye stalks which each end in a separate eye that grants it a complete 360-degree field of vision. Finally, and arguably most important, Stinkfly has a set of wings that allow it to fly, making it Ben's original alien with the most maneuverability off the ground. Stinkfly is a Lepidopteran from the planet Lepidoptera. This is a humid world covered in swamps and dense plant life, and the environment is home to a wide variety of insect-like life forms, and its rich oxygen-heavy atmosphere allowed them to grow to enormous sizes. The Lepidopterans became dominant aerial predators thanks to their intelligence, agility, and adaptability. Stinkfly is able to dart through the air and navigate complex terrains with ease, and thanks to its 4 eyes it has no blind spots when doing so, making it a very difficult target for enemies to deal with. However, Stinkfly has another tool as well, which is just as powerful and even more dangerous, and that is the chemicals within its body. It constantly emits an odor that is unpleasant enough to repel other nearby creatures. It can also release bursts of corrosive toxic or flammable methane gas as well. These substances can burn, blind, or suffocate opponents at will. But that's not all. This alien also fires sticky green bodily fluids at high speeds. It has a special filtration system along its underbelly that absorbs organic particles from the air to continuously produce more of this fluid, ensuring that Stinkfly never runs out of its ooze. This slime can be used like a glue to immobilize or bind opponents, can be used like spider silk, and is durable and flexible enough to be used as a grappling line or tether. Essentially, Stinkfly is just a very smelly and gross version of Spider-Man. However, Stinkfly's biology also comes with some pretty significant weaknesses. Like most insect-like species, it is highly vulnerable to fire and it can't swim, as its wings are fragile and easily damaged by moisture. While it is difficult to actually get a hold of, once Stinkfly is on the ground or restrained, it is way less useful, as it doesn't have a ton of physical strength to set itself free. On top of that, the chemicals that it releases can become a real problem when trying to be stealthy, as opponents can literally smell Stinkfly coming. Even so, like Diamondhead, Stinkfly is just an all-around very versatile and useful alien form that is effective in almost any situation. It has long-ranged attacks, crowd control, flight, agility, and even chemical attacks that all combine to make this a fantastic option in just about any occasion. The next transformation is Ripjaws, the first aquatic alien available to Ben. Ripjaws is a Pisces Volan from the planet Pisces. This is a world covered by a vast ocean that is illuminated only by bioluminescent life. Ripjaws' body is kind of similar to a more fish-like merman. It has gills that line its neck, and webbed hands and feet that allow it to swim underwater with incredible speed and precision. These feet can also be transformed into a mermaid-like tail that allows it to swim even faster. Then there's its head, which looks like an anglerfish, complete with a light lure that dangles from it. And their jaw is filled with serrated teeth with a bite force that is similar to a crocodile. Even so, Ripjaws is actually more like an amphibian that's able to function both in and out of water, though not indefinitely. Outside of water, its body quickly loses moisture, leading to dehydration and eventually suffocation. If it is exposed to dry environments for too long, it can even be fatal to that species. This makes Ripjaws one of Ben's most situational transformations, and while it is incredibly powerful in its element, it is severely limited outside of it. Underwater, however, Ripjaws is fast, powerful, and perfectly suited for its surroundings. It can use its teeth and physical strength to tear through just about anything in its path, and in a lot of ways it fights like Wildmutt, just in an underwater space. But because of its drawbacks, Ripjaws is one of Ben's least frequently used transformations. It appears only in 10 episodes across the entire first 4 seasons, and is entirely absent in the 3rd season. That isn't to say it isn't useful, however, unless the series takes place near a large body of water, Ripjaws' biology just makes it an impractical choice most of the time. The 9th alien in Ben's original lineup is Upgrade, a galvanic mechamorph from the artificial moon Galvan B. Unlike the other species that Ben can transform into, the galvanic mechamorphs are a form of artificial life created through science rather than natural biology. Galvan B was originally a barren, lifeless moon that orbited the Galvan homeworld, but when the Galvans aimed to expand their influence, they began to terraform it into a functional colony. During this process, their experimental liquid metal nanotechnology merged with the moon's native minerals and developed into a sentient species. The galvanic mechamorphs were self-replicating, silicon-based organisms composed of living machinery, and recognizing that they had unintentionally created a new form of intelligent life, the Galvans left the moon, leaving Galvan B to its new inhabitants. Upgrade is a shifting mass of black and silver liquid metal, with bright green circuit-like features that pulse across it. Its body is composed of billions of microscopic organisms known as nanites that are self-replicating units that function much like advanced nanomachines. This means that Upgrade has an entirely fluid physiology with no fixed shape. It can stretch, twist, flatten, shrink, or grow into a liquid-like form that allows it to slip through confined spaces or reshape itself to fit any environment. However, its true strength lies in its interaction with technology. The nanites that make up Upgrade's body can merge with virtually any technological system, and once they're integrated, Upgrade can manipulate the device at every level, operating remotely, altering its structure, rewriting its program, and even evolving it into a more advanced form. However, this power has its limits. Cybernetic organisms or sentient machines can resist assimilation through sheer willpower or by having a complex defense system. Similarly, heavily secured or encrypted technology can reject the nanite influence and leave Upgrade unable to override their programming. Even despite that, this remains to be one of the most versatile and potentially powerful abilities that Ben has access to early on. And the last of Ben's original 10 transformations is Ghostfreak, an ectoneurite from the planet Aner-Phaetos. But what makes Ghostfreak special doesn't really have anything to do with its home. It's that Ghostfreak is a living presence within the Omnitrix. From the very first moment that Ben tries this new form, something feels different, and Ghostfreak subtly begins to influence his thoughts and behaviors. Over time, that influence grows until Ghostfreak begins to wrestle control away entirely, eventually breaking free of the Omnitrix to exist as an independent entity. No other alien in Ben's collection demonstrate this ability at all, and it makes Ghostfreak feel truly unique and terrifying. Physically, Ghostfreak is a thin, spectral figure with long claws and a translucent, shifting body. He has a single eye that sits off-center to the left of his head, matched by the Omnitrix symbol placed on the left side of its chest. The lower half of his form trails off into a coiling wraith-like tail, and altogether he's just a spooky boy. Ghostfreak's body is composed of protoplasm, a material that allows him to become intangible at will. When he does so, Ghostfreak can pass through solid matter, disappear from sight, and move freely between the physical and immaterial worlds. In combat, these traits make him an unpredictable and nearly untouchable opponent, capable of evading attacks entirely or striking from unexpected angles before his enemy can even react to him. This also allows him to phase into living beings, taking direct control of their bodies as he possesses them. He can then manipulate their movements, suspend them in mid-air, or even suppress their consciousness entirely.
Hey Danny, if you could control a girl for just about 2 minutes...
It is an extension of this ability which lets him be such a strange force in the Omnitrix. Each time Ben transforms into Ghostfreak, he changes in a small way, becoming more harsh and colder, and even after reverting into his human form, he describes feeling detached and unsettled, as though part of his self has been replaced. This growing unease reaches a peak in the episode Ghost Freaked Out, when Ben is plagued by dreams in which Ghostfreak demands to be released. Later, when Ben is attempting to transform, the Omnitrix forces him into Ghostfreak against his will, and he becomes increasingly violent. Soon, Ben learns that the consciousness of the ectoneurites can persist even within a fragment of its genetic code. This means that the DNA sample that is stored within the Omnitrix was actually still alive. Over time, that consciousness pushed harder against its confinement, attempting to influence Ben's thoughts and actions to create an opportunity for freedom. Its goal wasn't just to escape the Omnitrix, though, it was to merge with Ben entirely. Ghostfreak eventually tears free from the Omnitrix as something far more terrifying than the version that Ben used. His hood splits open to reveal an inverted skull, his claws grow longer into needle-like talons, and black tendrils burst from his torso. This is the true form of the Ectoneurites. Ghostfreak's desire to fuse with Ben stems from his incompleteness. The fragment of DNA within the Omnitrix lacks the full structure of an Ectoneurite body, and that leaves Ghostfreak dependent on Ben's physiology to exist beyond the Omnitrix's limits. However, that isn't his only weakness. Once separated, he shows a massive vulnerability to sunlight. It forces his body to disintegrate, which is something that was held at bay while he was bonded with Ben. After his second defeat, Ghostfreak's form quietly reappears in the Omnitrix's selection wheel, but Ben never uses it again. Memory of what escaped and what it might do to him again is enough to leave that form untouched. And ultimately, after he is defeated, the show itself changes to reflect that he is gone, as the opening animation is altered and Ghostfreak's image is replaced by the first new alien that Ben unlocks after obtaining the Omnitrix, Cannonbolt. Cannonbolt was the first alien that Ben unlocks beyond his original 10, and fittingly, it happened entirely by accident. In the Big Tick, Gwen activates the Omnitrix and unintentionally reveals a new form that neither of them recognize. At first glance, Ben dismisses this as useless, as Cannonbolt seems only capable of curling up in a ball and rolling around. It's hardly impressive when you compare it to some of the other forms, but as it turns out, that simple ability has extraordinary potential and quickly became one of Ben's most practical and durable transformations. It is a living wrecking ball capable of insane defense and offense if it gets enough momentum. And Cannonbolt's design reflects this perfectly. He is broad and rounded, with oversized hands and feet and patches of dense fur covering his body. He has segmented plates of armor that wrap around his torso and limbs, locking together seamlessly when he curls up. Once closed, these plates form an almost perfect sphere that allows him to roll around at very high speeds and land some devastating strikes. Basically, he is a tanky Sonic the Hedgehog. Or Rammus if you play League. Cannonbolt is a member of the Arburian Pelorota species, originally from the planet Arburia. Much like Earth's armadillos, the Pelorota evolved with the ability to curl up defensively, using their incredibly dense plating to survive the predators on their home world. The armor's surface is so resilient that even advanced weaponry can struggle to penetrate it, making Cannonbolt as indestructible in his sphere form as Diamondhead is in his crystalline one. However, Ben takes this defense and immediately tries to make it a weapon, turning Cannonbolt into a living projectile. That said, because Cannonbolt's physiology was never intended for upright movement, he is pretty clumsy when uncurled. His center of gravity and broad limbs make balance really difficult, leaving him vulnerable when he's not in motion. Environmental conditions can also be a bit of a problem, as sticky surfaces or slippery ones can immobilize him or make him lose control. It's very similar to Accelerate. Despite this, if Ben needs a form to tank just about any hit or to create an opening, Cannonbolt might be one of his best options. Wildvine was another accidental discovery, first appearing in Camp Fear. It is a Florana from the planet Flores Verdants, a world perpetually bathed in light from its 3 suns. The result is a dense, ever-growing jungle teeming with both plant and animal life, where evolution favors adaptability and symbiosis. As a result, Wildvine's body is entirely plant-based. He is slender and flexible with 5 vine-like legs that allow him to move and extend in strange ways. Most notably though, there is a large Venus flytrap-like structure that is around his neck which he can open and close at will. On top of that, several pod-like fruits sprout from his back, each serving as a biological tool that include things like explosives, smoke bombs, or traps, which can do different things depending on how Ben chooses to use them, making an unpredictable and powerful arsenal that he has available to him in this form. But Wildvine's primary use is chlorokinesis, the power to generate and manipulate plant life. Functionally, this mirrors Diamondhead's control over Crystal, but obviously with a far more organic and less rigid quality. Wildvine can extend vines from the ground to immobilize targets, entangle them, or even create barriers. He can also transform his own limbs into extended tendrils that allow him to grapple, swing, or restrain enemies from a distance. Though this does have limits, overextending his vines can temporarily weaken his main structure and leaves his limbs elongated and less responsive until they recover. Interestingly, despite being a plant-based organism, Wildvine isn't especially vulnerable to fire. Instead, its greatest weakness is extreme cold. Low temperatures can cause his body to desiccate and freeze rapidly, cutting off his ability to regenerate or move. But with Wildvine's introduction, we have officially covered all of the major transformations from the original Ben 10 lineup that make up the core forms in the first 4 seasons. However, Ben's roster extends well beyond these initial forms, as we also see several other aliens as well, even if they are very rarely on screen or only there for a very short time. So now that we have laid the foundation, let's move on to the next set of transformations in Ben's arsenal, those belonging to Ben 10,000. Spitter is the first of this trio and only appears once. When a future version of Gwen transports the younger version of herself and Ben decades ahead to meet the adult Ben Tennyson, they find that this future Ben has access to a more advanced version of the Omnitrix, and this contains several alien DNA samples that are unavailable to the younger Ben. Included in them is Spitter, a transformation exclusive to that future iteration. Spitter is a spheroid from the planet Scalpask. Alongside Wildmutt, it is one of the only standard transformations in the series without an on-screen speaking role. However, outside of Ben 10,000, Spitter's appearances are pretty minimal, really only showing up in brief cameos in later episodes like Ken 10. By inflating its upper torso, Spitter is able to build internal pressure and releases a concentrated blast of slime from its mouth. This substance is both adhesive and slippery, capable of knocking enemies back or coating surfaces to restrict movement. It's basically a similar effect to what Stinkfly has. Buzzshock is the second of future Ben's exclusive transformations, at least within the context of the original series. It is a Nosedenian, a species originating from the Nosedean quasar, a name whose inspiration comes from the Nose Electric Railway in Japan. Just a bit of a fun fact in there. Physically, Buzzshock resembles a compact humanoid battery, a kind of living power cell. And as expected from a battery-based organism, he has abilities revolving around manipulating electricity. He can absorb electrical energy and then discharge it offensively in precise bursts to strike targets or power nearby tech. His control over the flow of electricity effectively turns him into a weapon and a portable generator, which is pretty useful all around. Interestingly though, his temperament also seems tied to the internal energy reserves that he has. When fully charged, he is animated and lively, but when his stores are depleted, his movement becomes slow and his personality dulls. Future Ben also has Arctiguana, who, as the name implies, is an ice-themed iguana. Arctiguana is a polar manzardil from the frozen caps of the planet Zinel. True to its environment, this species is not just cold-blooded in the biological sense, but also literally so. Its body temperature is naturally sub-zero, which allows it to thrive in climates that would instantly freeze most other aliens. Arctiguana can exhale concentrated blasts of frost ranging from frigid winds to focused beams of cryogenic energy, and these are cold enough to freeze water or other liquids solid on contact, making Arctiguana an ideal counter to heat-based opponents like Heatblast. Zinelli, like Earth, exists in a Goldilocks zone, an orbit around its star at just the right distance for liquid water to exist. However, unlike Earth, its rotational axis doesn't have a tilt, meaning that its hemispheres experience no seasonal change. And so Arctiguana lives on that half of the planet that effectively is winter all the time. Perk Upchuck is the next alien in Ben's expanding roster. Though he doesn't get much screen time in the original run, he does return later in the series. Alongside Diamondhead, Cannonbolt, Waybig, and Ghostfreak, Upchuck is one of the few transformations to appear in every series within the classic timeline. They first show up in Season 3's The Visitor, where Xylene unlocks a transformation for Ben. Upchuck is a gourmand, a species notable for its colony-like social structure, which functions similar to how ants do, as they are ruled collectively by a single queen. The remaining population, composed entirely of males, is divided into two distinct classes, the Perk Gourmands and the Merc Gourmands. While the two share their same basic physiology, Perk Gourmands are typically more cautious and defensive, while Merc Gourmands are more aggressive and combative, leading to a frequent tension between the two groups. In the original series, Ben's Omnitrix only gives him access to the Perk variant of Upchuck, and the Merc variant, with its darker color and more offensive temperament, would not appear until later series in the franchise. Perk Upchuck's abilities all center around its unique mouth, which has several long, muscular, adhesive tongues. These can grab objects, pull them closer, and drag them directly into his body. His jaws are even able to unhinge so he can swallow objects far larger than himself, including things like vehicles or creatures way bigger than he is. Once ingested, the swallowed material is transferred to a transspatial bladder, a pocket dimension shared collectively by all gourmands. Upchuck can then convert the stored material into volatile energy and release it as explosive projectiles through his mouth. However, he does have limits. Objects with extensive masses or that have a lot of energy in them can overwhelm him, leading to strain or complete rejection in general. In the original series, it was even established that Upchuck couldn't consume normal human food, however, later versions would remove this restriction. The next trio of aliens is Blitzwolfer, Snare-Oh, and Frankenstrike, and they're all connected through the Ghostfreak saga. Each of these aliens play a role in Ghostfreak's plan to engulf the Earth in perpetual darkness, and during the episode The Return and Be Afraid of the Dark, Ben acquires each of their DNA samples while fighting their respective species. The first of these is Blitzwolfer, the Omnitrix's DNA sample of a Loboan from the moon Luna Lobo. This was initially introduced as Ben Wolf in its debut episode, but would later be called Blitzwolfer, and it has one of the more unique transformation sequences in the entire series. Rather than activating immediately, Ben transforms gradually over the episode. His features change piece by piece, his hair thickens, claws begin to form, and his sideburns extend into a werewolf-like mane until Blitzwolfer's form is complete. By the final stage, he has fully transformed into Blitzwolfer, a huge bipedal werewolf with a long tail and massive claws. One of the most iconic features of this design, though, is that the head is entirely black except for the snout, which makes it look like a hooded executioner's cowl. Blitzwolfer's main unique ability is his supersonic howls, concentrated sound waves powerful enough to damage solid objects and disorient his enemies. However, this ability is never actually used within his debut episode. And outside of this, he is essentially just a feral powerhouse that relies on strength, agility, and claw-based combat, pretty similar to how Wildmutt is. Snare-Oh is the second of these DNA samples, and this one is essentially a mummy-like Aryan wearing a nemesis. He can use his bandages to wrap around and bind or immobilize his opponents, and these wrappings can be completely controlled freely at will and can even be extended pretty significant distances or be used to lift decently heavy objects. Much like how Blitzwolfer is effectively a better Wildmutt, this is effectively another Wildvine. And as a result of this overlap, Snare-Oh gets pretty limited screen time overall. And the final of Ghostfreak's minions is Frankenstrike, which is fittingly based on Frankenstein's monster, complete with a patchwork body, neck bolts, and large electric coils that come out of his back, allowing Frankenstrike to generate and discharge high-voltage blasts at his enemies. Unlike Buzzshock, however, this energy cannot be absorbed or recycled, only released. Frankenstrike's hand and feet also emit a magnetic field that allows him to cling to or move along magnetic surfaces with ease. And in the episode Be Afraid of the Dark, Frankenstrike ends up on the exterior hull of a space shuttle, where his magnetic abilities come into play, keeping him anchored firmly to the ship as he continues to fight. That's actually the only episode that Frankenstrike appears in the original series. However, of the three Ghostfreak minion alien forms, he is the one to make the most consistent appearances in later series. Next up is Ditto, a small cartoonish alien roughly the size of a human child. It has a short humanoid body with broad hands similar to Cannonbolt's, and 3 short fins that grow from the top of its head. Though the name might be similar, this Ditto is a far more powerful version than its Pokemon counterpart. It can split itself into multiple identical copies, each with its own independent consciousness and full access to Ben's powers while in that form. Every clone can then split again, creating a potentially infinite swarm of Dittos. However, this ability comes with a pretty major drawback, potentially the worst among any alien we've seen so far. Ben cannot revert to his human form unless every clone has re-merged. So if even one Ditto remains separated, say trapped or launched into orbit, then Ben is effectively locked in alien form, which is definitely one of the scarier weaknesses that any alien might have for him. However, this risk is definitely worth how powerful this form can potentially be. The second to last alien introduced in the original Ben 10 series is Eye Guy, whose defining feature is, unsurprisingly, his eyes. Eye Guy is the Omnitrix's sample of the Opticoid from the planet Cytra. At first glance, Eye Guy might just look like a Cyclops, but with one key difference: his main eye is located in the center of his chest rather than on his face. Then, where a normal person's eyes might be, he instead has a pair of bat-like ears that jut from the sides of his head. His shoulders and arms are also covered in dozens of smaller eyes, roughly 20 in total, and all are capable of independent movement, which gives him near 360-degree vision, pretty similar to Stinkfly. However, rather than being able to fly or spit goop, Eye Guy can fire a variety of energy attacks from his eyes instead, including lasers, green fire, electricity, and ice, making him super useful in a ton of different situations. However, Eye Guy holds a unique distinction among the original roster, as he is the only one unlocked off-screen. His debut in Ben 10 vs. the Negative 10 Part 2 happens without any build-up or explanation. There's no moment of surprise, no "what does this one do?" Ben just transforms into Eye Guy as if he'd had him all along. That said, in his one appearance, Eye Guy faces off against the members of the villainous Negative 10, and he defeats Clancy by freezing him solid, and then blasts Dr. Amino away with an energy beam before reverting back to human form. And that's kinda it, his one and only outing in the original series. But that brings us to the final alien Ben used in the original Ben 10 series, Waybig. And you might be thinking, wait, wasn't Eye Guy the last one that we saw? After all, the Negative 10 finale doesn't feature any new transformations, and that seems like the end for the show. But Waybig's debut actually comes in Ben 10 Secret of the Omnitrix, the first movie in the franchise. While technically a standalone film, it also serves as episodes 10 through 12 of Season 4, making it canonically the true conclusion of the original series. Waybig is the Omnitrix's version of a Tokustar, a race of towering aliens who are, as the name suggests, way big, being hundreds of feet tall. Unlike most of Ben's transformations, the Tokustar aren't native to a planet. Instead, each is born from a rare and violent cosmic storm, essentially meaning that every Tokustar is literally an accident of the universe. Waybig's signature ability is to unleash devastating cosmic rays, which can be fired either from his eyes or by crossing his arms in an X shape to create a far stronger blast, powerful enough to disintegrate asteroids or even small planets outright. And with planet-level strength and cosmic energy at his command, Waybig stands literally head and shoulders above the rest of Ben's original roster. And with that, we have officially covered all of Ben's transformations from the original Ben 10 series. Personally, my favorites are probably Ghostfreak for the role that he plays in the story and the overall creepiness factor, and Cannonbolt because he's just a little bouncy guy. But I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments what your favorite aliens are and why. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future. If you want to see more from Uproar Media, click on the links on screen now for my videos on all the gems in Steven Universe or on all of Phineas and Ferb's experiments. For now though, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.